This is Friends Who Talk About Money from John Hancock, a show where we take on the money taboo and celebrate the power of financial conversations in all their honest, awkward, and inspirational glory. I'm your host, Claire Wasserman, writer, career coach, and financial advocate. As retirement plans get closer to current reality, the cracks can start to show. So, what happens when you need to change the game plan in the fourth quarter? What can a stock market plunge do to retirement savings? And how can money moves early on in life affect your retirement picture? On today's episode, we're inviting two close friends to discuss the ways they've had to tweak their financial plans and mindsets in order to keep their dream retirement in sight. We'll also hear from Patrick Murphy, CEO of John Hancock Retirement, who will share ideas for how to be financially prepared for life after work, no matter what comes your way. Time to talk money. Hey, Julie and Tammy, welcome. Thanks so much for being with us.
We're here. Glad to be here.
So, easy question to start out with. I would love for you both to tell me your ages, locations, occupations, etc.
All right. I am Julie. I am married to Ron. I am in Greeley, Colorado.
You have a job.
Oh, and I am with Remax Real Estate.
And this is Tammy, and I am 59, soon to be 59 and a half. I live in Greeley as well, grew up in the next town over, Windsor, Colorado. And I don't have a job right now other than some rental property and deciding what to do next.
Welcome, guys. Tell us the story. How did you meet?
We figured it was right around 2006. We met on a moonlight bike ride that our city has. And that first night, we were about the only two that were riding beach cruisers. Everybody else had more cycling bikes, but it's just a easy ride through the streets of Greeley. We met that night, and at that time, Julie was just going through a divorce. She had bought or was starting a franchise, Roosters Men's Haircutting.
Right.
And I was married, raising 3 kids. I believe I had my real estate photography business at that time. Fast forward now, I'm single. My husband passed away 6 years ago. And Julie
and I'm married.
Is married.
5 years.
And we still ride bikes. We rode yesterday.
So I just want to talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. When you met, I think one of you had already started a business and the other one was still working for somebody else.
I've always had businesses. And when I got divorced, I left my business, my house, my marriage all in one fell swoop. And I was starting a new business as a single woman, 50 years old. And it was a franchise.
Yes, I had the real estate business, and I've had several businesses of my own. I did a video business where I videotaped horses, cataloging them for farms. I had a internet business, a scrapbook and rubber stamping business in the 90s up till about 2008, I think. I've had several businesses. There's usually 1 or 2 going at a time.
When you met, did you immediately start talking about money, or sort of how much was finances part of your conversations?
I think once we realized that we were both entrepreneurs was when we started talking about money. So it would have been pretty early in our conversations.
Right.
And I would say that Julie and I have talked quite a bit, just as we would talk about like a new business. There were several that we looked at doing together. Remember ink cartridge refills?
Oh, yeah.
And so that just kind of naturally, well, how much do you think we could make? How hard do you think we would have to work? How expensive is it going to be?
She's a great person to bounce off what I call harebrained ideas. See what sticks. Throw it against the wall, see what sticks.
If you weren't really talking about money before in your life, maybe besides your partners, what was it about each other that made you feel comfortable to talk about it?
Well, I think it was because we connected with regard to interesting things, I guess, as it relates to business mostly, I think, because we just kind of threw ideas around, and then we started talking about monthly cash flow, and what you need to live on.
And
so
especially when my husband got sick, because we knew from diagnosis that he was not going to be with us very long. And Julie was, she was one of the very first people that I told what was happening. And I just needed somebody that I could bounce off. I mean, we went from like $150,000 a year to less than $40,000 a year overnight. And that type of a swing financially, I needed someone that could hold my hand and talk me off the cliff. And Julie was that person.
So, I mean, you just talked about a major milestone that really got you thinking maybe differently about finances or, pensions and life insurance. And, before Wayne got sick, for you, Tammy, how much did you think about finances? What was your sort of financial literacy up until that point?
I've thought about finances probably all of my adult life. I got my first 401k when I was 21 years old and continued to save up until here just recently when I'm going to start doing the opposite and go spending.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Julie?
For me, I wish I'd had somebody adding some money to a 401k. I've always been self-employed, so money has always been business is, that's the definition is you make profits. And so it's always been a part of my thinking all the time.
Let's talk a little bit about retirement here. When you were younger, how much did you think about retirement? When did the big R sort of enter your consciousness?
Well, it was interesting because it didn't really enter my consciousness until probably the mid 40s, early to mid 40s. And then it did because I had an employee who was turning 50 and she said, or no, she was turning 60. And she said she hadn't thought about it until that day. And she never thought about a day when she would not be able to work. And I thought that was ridiculous at the time. And so that made me start to think about it.
In my early 20s, and would have been right about when I turned 21, I was working at Kodak. I was an industrial mechanic. And my dad worked at Kodak. He had worked at Kodak since he was 16 years old. So he had 30, 40 years in there. And he took an early retirement at 51 and quit his corporate job and went up to the ski slopes here in Colorado and became a ski photographer. And I thought, oh my God, that's so much funner than doing a regular job. So that kind of became the goal very early on for me. And my husband was influenced by that as well. And we didn't drive new cars. We didn't move up into houses when we got raises. We kind of socked that money away, most of it being 401k.
So Tammy, didn't you guys at one point talked about paying off a house because you did it. How old were you when you paid it off?
45 the first time.
Okay. So you guys discussed paying off the house, obviously, early.
Because when you don't have a house payment, you've just freed up $1,000 a month.
Okay.
But then we took a mortgage on it and bought a rental house.
When did real estate come into the picture? Julie, you mentioned when you met Tammy, you were in real estate before, and I think Tammy, maybe you were taking photographs. Just remind me real quick, what were you doing in real estate, Julie?
I got involved in buying rentals in about 1999. And in the year 2000, I got a real estate license because I had enjoyed it. And most of the real estate license, the reason I got it was for myself.
I had my first rental in my 20s. Wayne and I purchased two. Just kind of, we had watched other people see that was a way to grow wealth quicker. And we didn't work well together in real estate, but I always, how some girls like to collect shoes and purses? I like to collect real estate.
Julie, you mentioned that you initially started to really think about retirement when you had an employee who brought it up to you. I am curious though, in general, when it comes to finances, how engaged were you with your own finances?
Oh, I watched over the finances through the first marriage, and then when I got divorced at 49, immersed in it.
And talk to me about your husband, Ron. Who is he and how has he influenced or the way that you look at money?
Greatly, he has influenced it. The way that he has influenced it is everything comes down to monthly income. Um, Retiring on assets is not fun because you're constantly worried about what you have to, when to take from it, how much you can take for it, will it last your lifetime, all of that. And it came down to, how do you take these assets and make them into monthly income? And how long will that bucket last before you need to tap into a different bucket? Or, if it's real estate, then, the rental income and planning for upgrades and maintenance and things like that ahead of time so that that you can maintain a cash flow every month.
What about changes that you've made for both of you when it comes to your money? Things that you've learned that you're now doing differently, maybe.
I would say that I've learned I would rather spend my money on experiences than on things. I don't need a coach purse anymore. Well, I do need a coach purse, but I don't need one every year. They'll last, 3-4 years. I don't need to drive a new car. I just need a reliable car. I would rather spend my money going to see things, experiences with my kids, making memories.
Speaking of Coach bags, I'm so glad that you brought that up, Tammy. I heard that you are an excellent eBay seller. In fact, maybe you were one of the first eBay sellers. I don't know. You have a business right around selling bags online. Tell
Yes.
me more about that.
I started buying and selling on eBay back in 1997. I believe that was right in the very early days because my mom was still alive, and I remember her saying, "What are you doing?"
Well, there was a Coach outlet store.
Yeah, there is a Coach outlet in the next town over. So I would go, I'd see a new purse and decide that I want one, and I would buy 2 or 3 of the same one, sell 2 of the 3 on eBay to pay for the one that I wanted to keep. And then also specialized in fossil watches, sunglasses, things that I really liked.
My God, were you doing this full time? Like, how much money were you making from this?
She was raising children, so it was a home-based business, right?
We would go to the outlet store once or twice a week. In fact, the fossil outlet would call me when they would get a new shipment in. And my credit card bill with them was about $3,000 a month.
She had some splaining to do to her husband.
Wayne would have a conniption the first few months. But I learned how, I went to eBay University, learned how to sell, how they wanted us to sell to stay within the rules. And then all day Sunday, I would spend putting listings on eBay, kind of take care of the kids during the week. Auctions would end Sunday night after I'd spent all day doing the next week's auctions, do all of my shipping on Mondays and Tuesdays, and got to go to all my kids' swim meets and be a good mom.
Through all of these businesses that you had, retirement factored in, it sounds like you were aware that you needed to have a 401k, but
Yes.
saving in general, thinking about the future, what part did that play?
So we definitely maxed out my husband's 401k, and then always tried to save at least 10% of whatever our salary was. Some years were 20%. To be real honest, the last several months, I haven't saved anything. I've been spending it. But it was like a bill. It was like your car payment. Money always went into savings automatically.
Yeah, I found that was the most effective way and I would also counsel employees that way too. When you fill out that form for the company for your what bank account your money's going into. A lot of the employees, I would tell them, take 10% and stick it in the savings account and don't look at it. And it would be automatic. And I like things that are automated. It takes the decision every time out of it and takes the emotion out. It's a plan.
I'd like to add one other thing. That 401k, we never counted that as savings. That was a bill. We never saw it. So when I say we saved 10%, it was really higher than that because we didn't count the 401k. We didn't know if we'd ever see it.
As you get closer to retirement, well, first of all, I should ask, do either of you anticipate or want to retire?
I consider myself retired. I don't work a regular job. My rentals, that is not a day-to-day business. So I pretty much consider myself retired now.
I will consider myself retired when the rentals are paid off. So that's what I'm mostly working for right now, is to pay off any existing mortgages on the rentals. And then that will provide us with enough cash flow once they're paid off to fully retire.
Has retirement always been a goal? I mean, I know, Tammy, you mentioned that your dad retired at 51, which I don't know if that's possible anymore for anybody. But when both of you imagine what retirement would look like, when it would happen, the money that you needed for it, is there a time, like as it gets closer, has your mindset changed around what retirement could or you want it to be?
It's rather than how will I spend my time, what type of life do I want to build? If you're building something is a whole different mindset. So when I looked at, I was telling Julie that
instead of what do I want to be when I grow up, which is the question we always asked before, the new question is what?
What type of life do I want to build?
Right.
I want to be healthy, so I'm physically active. I want nutrition to play a part in my life. I want a spiritual component in my life, and not so much what is my purpose, but what do I want my life to look like? And for me, relationships are one of the biggest parts of that. But you don't get paid to be somebody's friend, I don't think.
Well, so far it's not working.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah, I see how that shift happens, right? Like, what is my purpose? What do I want to be versus what do I want my life to look like? How does money factor into that for you?
Money gives me freedom. Having money, especially that monthly income from my rentals, I've got a pension, soon to be some of that 401k. I don't have to worry about paying my bills. I know that they're quite manageable. So, and then my tastes have also shifted. Rather than a week in Mexico that might be a $2,000, $4,000 vacation, I'm just as happy getting in the car and driving to Arizona to go stay with my old neighbors for a week. That costs like $300.
And as you enter into retirement, or I guess are sort of in it or practicing retirement, I'm curious, lifestyle changes for you. I mean, Tammy, you mentioned the different kinds of vacations that you're taking. I mean, anything else that's shifted for you besides the mindset you might have towards retirement?
Right off the top of my head, my diet and not eating out so much anymore, especially with Corona.
The Rona.
Yes. I'll fix a big dinner and invite 5 or 6 other single friends over for dinner and spend that time talking about life and eating good food. And it's all about the relationship. So yes, that's changing. I've got the freedom and the time to be able to do that.
Well, for me, right now we have 11 grandchildren, and that certainly changed everything. And I think, Tammy, for you, you don't have grandkids yet, but it might change for you if you do have grandkids.
Or a boyfriend.
Well, there you go.
Because he may have grandkids.
That's right.
Tammy, you talked about COVID-19 or Rona. How has it impacted your plans, your retirement plans?
Well, after it scared the living daylights out of me watching everything fall apart so quickly, I was skiing in Utah when it really all started coming down. it sped things up. I had been trying, my dream job was to be a flight attendant. And I had been trying to do that for over a year now. The last place I want to be is in an airplane now.
For me, the way the Rona changed was I was quite surprised at what my reaction to it was. I had a lot of commissions in real estate that were set to close in April, and they all disappeared. And I had been working on them for months and months and months. And so realizing that I had worked this year basically for free was irritating at best. So, and my reaction to it could have been better.
Do you, and you may have said this earlier, but how have you seen the retirement money and the savings that you've had? How have you seen yourself benefiting from that now?
I don't lose a whole lot of sleep over money so much. And I've diversified it. So some of it's in the market. I try not to look at that a whole lot. Some of it I've pulled off of the market before all of this happened. And just because in 2008, when we had the last recession, I was in life insurance, moved over to annuities, and had people calling me frantic that they were losing all of their money. So I took a chunk out of the market that I planned to live on for the first few years of retirement.
And you're doing that now?
I will October 4th. That's when I'm 59 and a half.
Tammy feels like she got gypped out of her birthday this year because her birthday was interrupted by the Rona and we couldn't have a party. So I told Tammy, I said, let's just celebrate your half birthday. So turns out that this was birthday number 59. So we're going to celebrate her 59 and a half birthday, which is the magic number of when you can tap your retirement and IRA account. So it was going to be a big birthday anyway. So we're having a 59 and a half birthday party in October.
More champagne.
If you had $1 million to spend together, how would you spend it?
We'd go to Arizona and ride bikes.
Tammy, $1 million. That's a lot of money. I want to make money on the million.
Yeah, then it would last a lot longer.
We would build a community of what we envision would be a really hot commodity in Arizona. We just looked at some rental units that had like park model homes, one on each side, and then a deck that tied these two together. And it was a fascinating concept that they build these in a factory, drop them, and then we'd rent them. We think about that.
That would be fun. With a swimming pool.
I am so excited to have our expert for this segment, Patrick Murphy. He is the CEO of John Hancock Retirement. Thanks, Pat. I'm so happy that you're here with us.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks for letting me join you. I'm excited too.
Okay, so Tammy mentioned that she opened a 401k plan at the age of 21, but it wasn't until Julie's mid-40s that she started thinking about retirement. So I'm curious, how important is it to start saving for retirement when you still have 30 to 40 years of work ahead of you?
I think that's actually the key to being successful. Myself personally, I started saving for retirement when I was 22. So Tammy has a leg up on me by a year, but I think the earlier you get started, the better. And I can't stress enough. You need to start saving for retirement, the day you start working, because it's easier, right? This is, we talk a lot about in the financial services world, it's time, not timing. So use time to your advantage. The longer you wait, the more you actually have to save to catch up. And so it actually, and this is again drawing from my own personal experience, it felt easier to start early and start at a low amount and then ramp up over time. And it also helped me be able to balance saving for retirement, which was so far in the future for me back then. It's not so far away anymore. But it helped me balance paying off student loans, which I had coming out of college, and then just figuring out what other things that I wanted to do in my life that were more short term.
Okay, so you talked about your personal experience, so I'm going to talk about mine. I'm 32 and I have not saved a dime for retirement. So people listening, don't judge me. Well, Pat, I guess you can judge me. Am I too late?
No, I'm not going to judge you. I'm just going to encourage you. Start. Matter of fact, if you want to stop doing what we're doing right now and sign up, go ahead. I'll wait.
By the way, you also mentioned ramping up. Does that mean because presumably your paycheck was getting larger, you started to put away more? Or, how did that work for you?
That's it exactly. So when I started feeling more comfortable, like, having confidence financially, I had a better feel for what my short-term needs were. And so as I felt confident that I had enough money to do the things that I wanted to do today, I had enough money to pay off my student loans. I felt more comfortable increasing my 401k contributions. I also did that as I used like the annual raise time to increase my contributions as well. So when I got my bump in pay, I gave myself a bump in savings, and that worked well.
What percentage of your income did you start putting away? And then I don't know if you want to speak now, but what was the percentage and how did it change over time?
I started putting 1% of my pay away. I mean, I literally just started at the bare minimum, and now I put the maximum away. I'll tell you one of the things that helped me when I paid off my student loans. I took the money that I was using to pay my student loans, and I increased my 401k contributions by that amount. And that actually allowed me to get the most out of the company match as well. So I felt like that was a good place to be at that time. And then as I got older and I was saving for my kids' education, and I was got to even like more recently helping to care for an ailing parent. I had to balance some things, and then I decreased my contribution for a little bit while I was saving for my kids' college, and then when that was all set, I increased my contribution again. So it's not like once you do something, it's written in stone, and you can't change it, right? Life circumstances happen, and life changes, and so I think the real important thing is to have a really good understanding of your short-term goals, your midterm goals, and your long-term goals. And actually, when you start to accumulate money in those different buckets that you've earmarked for different time frames, it builds confidence, and it builds more conviction that you know what you're doing, and it just makes life easier. That's what I found, and I can say that now again, but early in my career, that wasn't easy for me, and I stressed a lot about it, and I did have the balance between debt and saving for the longer term.
So if I have debt, can I still be putting money away? I have a feeling I know what your answer is, but for those who are looking at a ton of debt, it can feel almost irresponsible, to pay towards anything else but that debt. So what's your advice for those people?
Great question. And you're right. My answer is yes. If you have debt, you can afford to save for the future, whether that future is for something in 3 years or something in 30 years. You can do that. It really comes down to balance. It's not an either or proposition when we think about these things. It can be both, just with the right balance and the right measure, depending on the rates of return, the interest that you're paying, and then the balance between the short term and long term goals.
Yeah, and in the conversation that I had with Tammy and Julie, we discussed understanding their full financial picture as they thought about putting a portion of their paycheck to a savings account that was separate from retirement savings. And Tammy also mentioned having a pension. So there were different forms of pay that they were allocating in different places, and also for both of them, retirement looked different. And it does for people listening, I'm sure, and what you imagine retirement to be may change over the course of your career and your life. Julie and Tammy in particular, they mentioned that they have altered their mindset from, quote, what do I want to be when I grow up, to, what type of life do I want to build? So I'm curious, do you have advice for listeners who are still trying to figure out what their retirement definition is?
Yeah, I think the best advice I can provide is to really try to get a sense of, try to visualize what retirement looks like. Does it include a lot of travel, which is more expensive? Does it include living in a city versus living in a more rural environment? Is it living in a state that has high tax rates versus a state that has no income tax at all? Those things matter. And what's your health like? Do you anticipate, having a very, vibrant, healthy lifestyle, or do you have medical issues that will require some additional care, as you get older? All of those things, while you can't predict them with, 100% certainty, but to have an idea and try to visualize what it might look like is really important, because then that'll help give you an indication of what your income needs will be in retirement. And then you can start shooting for that, achieving that goal. But having a plan is really important.
So for those who have a pretty good idea of what they want to do in retirement and they have a solid understanding of their financial picture, what's next for them besides a good life? What's next financially for them?
Patience, I think, is really important. I mean, we're in an environment right now where there's a lot of economic upheaval, turmoil, right? And so you have to remember the plan, stick to the plan, have patience. Having a plan and not executing on it is a really I'll use the word tragic, but I don't want to make it seem worse than it really is. But if you have a plan and you don't follow it, it's not going to lead to success. I used to think that I had the time to do all this stuff myself and didn't need a financial advisor. But I have a financial advisor who I lean on. I bounce things off of. He's been with me for 15 years, and sometimes it's just verifying things that I think, and other times it's him preventing me from making an emotional decision that would otherwise be harmful for me ultimately in the long run. And so I'm not immune to what happens to people, right? It's when you can get down to it, financial services, financial saving for a goal, saving for retirement, it's really just math. But people have emotion around that math, and so sometimes that can lead people to bad behaviors.
I appreciate that you mentioned, turmoil in the market and obviously what's going on right now, which is COVID-19. And Julie said that she felt like she was being forced into retirement because of the financial implications of COVID-19. And, my guess is that she's not alone. So do you have tips for people who are experiencing a sudden shift in retirement plans, whether it's retiring early or working longer than expected? So you talked about patience, which I think is excellent. Besides that, what can those folks do?
Yeah, there's different ways to think about retirement. Again, I make it personal. My mom retired 3 times, and she retired, at the obligatory age 65 because she thought that's what she had to do, and then she realized she was bored, and so she went back to work. And then my stepdad retired, and then she retired with him, and then realized that they weren't ready to spend all that time together. So she went back to work again. But part of what people don't think about was the emotional part of it and the social part of it. What are they going to do after they quote stop working? And where is their social network? Where are their friends? And how do they stay connected? And so some of the feeling forced into retirement, a big part of that is the social aspect of it, and losing the connection with the people that you spend so much time with on a day-to-day basis. So it's really important to plan to maintain those connections.
So just kind of recap, I'm going to tell you what I learned here, since I had a lot to learn at the beginning of this conversation, which is that retirement isn't really separate. It's like you have to have a full understanding of, your financial picture, and retirement fits into that. Starting early is good. Every little bit counts. But also for those of you who are like me, don't despair. As Pat said, math, right? Keep this math. And then also, yes, it's important to make a plan, but you also have to be fluid with it. This is attached to your life and what you want your life to be. So as much as it's math, you also have to pay attention to your needs, your wants, your, staying connected with people. Well, thanks, Pat. I appreciate you being here. I learned a ton. You should see all my notes. So I'm gonna leave now so I can go open a retirement account.
There you go, Claire. You learn nothing else. So let's get into that plan and start saving.
Awesome. A big thanks to Julie and Tammy for turning retirement talk into an engaging heart-to-heart, and to our expert guest, Patrick, for offering guidance on how to plan for the future. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to Friends Who Talk About Money wherever you listen to your podcasts.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers at the time of recording and are subject to change as market and other conditions warrant. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be, nor shall it be interpreted or construed as, a recommendation or providing advice, impartial or otherwise, regarding any specific product or security.